Hello, friends. Hi, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I hope you are having a great spooky season. Today, we are here because I want us to cozy up so that I can tell you about a haunted building here in Montreal that I have been interested in for some time. I originally wanted to share a few haunted places here in Montreal. Apparently, we are one of the most haunted cities in Canada, maybe even North America, but I don't know how true that is. Don't take my word for it. But we are a pretty haunted city. I decided to stick with a story of one place that I have been interested in for some time. And that specific place is 1234 Rue de la Montagne. It is, I believe now, Le Cinq, like Club Le Cinq. It's changed quite a few times. We'll get into that. A lot of locals tend to change into different things, just business stuff and whatever. But I just have a feeling, I like to think that this one is because it's haunted. I mean, maybe a lot of other places are haunted and that's why those locals change too. But anyways, let's get right into it. So even though now this place is a club, it originally wasn't constructed to be a club. I mean, I don't know why it would have been. It was constructed in 1859 and it was actually designed to be a family home for a wealthy businessman named David R. Wood. At the time, the house was bought by a man named Alexander, who at the time was very excited to raise a large family. But then his wife shortly died after giving birth to their son Elliot. So he was upset that it was said that he was upset that he wasn't going to be able to raise a large family. I would hope that he was also upset that he lost his wife. Maybe for both. Anyways, a year later, he ends up marrying his late wife's younger sister, Amy, and they go on to have a large family. They have 2 daughters and 8 sons, so he gets his big family. In the late 1890s, he ends up getting throat cancer and having to get an operation that causes him not to be able to talk, so he could only really communicate with people through writing. He eventually later that year ends up passing away due to his cancer. Fast forward to 1902. The building is bought by a man named Joseph Worry and Bros. I guess that's the company. Anyways, it's turned into a funeral home. He himself, Joseph, is a funeral director. For the next decade, this place is a funeral home. And they hold a lot of important people's funerals from like the English Protestant community. Anyways, it's a funeral home. You get the picture. In 1970, the company ends up moving to a new facility and the home was abandoned for a couple years. So the creepy building ends up sitting empty for the next 8 years and it ends up building a reputation for a haunted house. So I guess that this is because it was a funeral home. There was no stories of anything really happening. I assume it's just because it was a funeral home and now it's abandoned and it's creepy. In 1978, 8 years later, the building ends up getting repurposed into an elegant nightclub. Over the years, said nightclub ends up hosting a lot of very popular people like Mick Jagger, Boy George, the people from Cirque du Soleil, Cirque du Soleil, not the people from Cirque du Soleil, Cirque du Soleil, you get the picture. Lots of popular people. The club would end up changing name a couple times, but all the while, it's still a very popular nightclub. Even though the club name is changing, it's still remaining haunted. There's a lot of stories going on at this time. One of them being, and I remember hearing this, that in the basement woman's washroom, there would be a ghost of a woman with an incision going down her torso that looked like it was done by a mortician. And people would just say that nobody should go to said washroom alone because that sounds really scary I remember hearing this and then being afraid of public washrooms even more. Um, even though I was not going to said public washroom. That just scared me. Like, I don't know, could you imagine? Like a ghost in the washroom. Like, no, I'm vulnerable there. No, I mean, of all places, no, thank you. Anyways, this is a very popular story coming from this specific building. A lot of people have encountered said ghost. So when the nightclub was undergoing renovations, some workers said that a large orb of light was coming at them while they were working, and that freaked them out. They told the owner, and he just ignored it. He didn't care. I don't know what it was. He was like, no, thank you. Or he was like, I don't believe you. I don't know what it is. Okay. He ignores it. That's it. Okay. But that night, he decided to go and see how the renovations were going. Okay. He's going to get his payback now. So he goes in and he notices a tall, beautiful woman standing facing the opposite way from him. The nightclub's closed, okay? But he decides to go after her. Maybe, I don't know, he's gonna like chat her up. I don't know what. Anyways, he decides to go after this woman. I assume he wasn't scared, but also it's closed. There's gonna, like, why is there somebody there? The workers just told you they saw an orb. This man's not scared. Anyways, he approaches the woman. The woman turns around and, are we surprised? He almost falls off his chair because the woman has no face, okay? It's as though her face was surgically removed. That would be enough to put me in my grave. He obviously gets very scared and ends up leaving the renovations undone. That's the last we hear of this guy. He's out, he's gone. I would be too. Who can blame the guy? So also on the ground level, there's a mysterious table near the coat check that tends to move around on its own. It's said that this is where the bodies would get their last touching up before being shown at the funeral home. A little something that's telling us that the place is obviously very haunted if the other stories didn't convince you. Now also the attic. Oh my god, am I pronouncing attic properly? Of all things to not know how to pronounce the attic. Okay. Apparently it's known to be very haunted and people are told not to go up there. Also, people have said that if you look at the building, like if you look upstairs at the attic windows, you can see a woman standing in the dusty windows. And that's also why it's rumored that the windows are now boarded up. I don't know. I mean, it could be because maybe the attic isn't used or it's under construction or what, but it's scary to think that it's because people keep on seeing the ghost of a woman in the window. But some people go out of curiosity sometimes or by mistake. Once a staff member entered on a dare, but ended up just bolting out when they saw something floating in the corner. Also, once a celebrity's bodyguard ended up there on accident and felt as though he was disturbing somebody and felt as though there was a presence and he felt very unwelcomed. He had goosebumps everywhere, decided to leave, and said that it took at least a week for him to get over those goosebumps, for them to like go away. So this is a story I didn't hear of before, but really freaked me out when I heard this one. In 2005, a drunken girl was told not to go into the attic, but she did anyways. And as soon as she did, they heard hysterical, loud screaming that wouldn't stop coming from the attic. She ended up bolting out the window onto the balcony and jumping off in fear. Thank God that the bodyguards were able to catch her. She still didn't stop screaming. She ended up getting taken away in an ambulance. That's really creepy. That's really scary. I hope she's okay. So now I assume by this point it's pretty popular that the place is haunted. Naturally, paranormal investigators get to work. They come and they want to film some of their shows. I don't know if you remember Creepy Canada. They come and they film a little something at the 1234 de la Montagne Street building. At this point, it's still a nightclub. So in the video, Creepy Canada, hosted by Terry Boyle, explains the nightclub has a particularly menacing haunting. They suggest that these are not passive ghosts, but aggressive, whose physical appearance embodies our dark fears. Creepy. Okay, so remember when it was a funeral home before it was ever a club? Now there's mentions that back then there could have been necrophilia going on in the mortuary. So they suggest that maybe it's the spirits of the people couldn't rest in peace because of what happened to their bodies. So the club is abandoned for a couple years. It reopens as another nightclub, but this time the owners decide to do something about the hauntings after they come across an orb. So they get a professional witch to come in and do some cleansing ceremonies, and they believe that this actually gets rid of some of the spirits, not all of them. They say that some of them will just always feel at home there. So now it's 2010. The DJ MC Mario invites a paranormal investigator to come on over because while he's there, he hears a 10 to 12-year-old girl singing. Also was said because he wanted to know if the nightclub and the ghosts could coexist, thus having a good club, right? So can we coexist? Can we do this? So this paranormal investigator comes over. He also is somebody who filmed something for a French show. Also, I want to mention that before purchasing this club, he said that he was not a non-believer of ghosts and spirits, a little bit of a skeptic, I guess you would say. And once he purchased this place, that changed. So, using ghost hunting tools such as EMF readers and digital cameras, the team sets out to investigate the ladies' washroom. Remember, where people are said to see a woman with a cut down her torso. So then they go on to have this type of seance where it would be as if you were using a Ouija board, it was said. I don't know what kind of seance it is. But they decide to do this and vocalize questions and prompts to the spirits. Apparently they were able to communicate with quite a few spirits. One of them being, remember Alexander? One of them being his first wife. Remember the one who passed away right after giving birth to her son Elliot? Her. Who expresses that she's unhappy because the noise of the club keeps her daughter up, who also haunts the building. And she also expresses that the nightclub is kind of a taboo, okay? So she's unhappy, okay, with the nightclub and its noise. So they end up making a deal with the spirit, saying that if they started off every night playing Mozart, that they can coexist. They can have their nightclub, and they could live and haunt the building and be happily ever after. Okay, everybody's happy. So DJ MC Mario ends up agreeing and thus plays Mozart at the beginning of every night, despite them being able to coexist, despite MC Mario always playing Mozart before the beginning of each night. In February of 2013, the nightclub ends up getting shut and reopened as what we know today as Le Cinq. With that being said, there was no stories of anything happening more recently. I imagine that things did happen. Maybe I just couldn't find them. If you heard of anything, let me know. I'm interested. But more recently, very recently actually, I think it's about maybe a week and a half ago that they decide that Le Cinq is once again shutting down, and it was just released a couple days ago that it's going to become a Japanese steak house. So once again, it closed and reopened. Is it about the ghosts? Or is it just business? Business problems, this, that, and the other. COVID did happen. Clubs were closed for a while. I like to think it's just the ghosts that haunt the place because either terrible things happen to their bodies or they're just trying to live. Or not, well, live, you know what I mean. They're just trying to be comfortable in what was once their home. That is all for today's story. If you have any other information on this place, don't be shy to share it with me, either in the comments or in a message. Thank you so much for sitting down with me today and listening. My cat thinks I'm talking to her. She's been looking right at me the entire time. Somebody's listening. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. I will see you soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos. I will see you very soon. Take care of yourself. Goodbye.